Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
And my name is Jeff.
And we have a very special guest with us today, Will Hughes. I know him from the Everything to Guppy podcast from the duckfeed.tv network. Welcome, Will.
Hi, thanks for the welcome, Gabe.
I guess you want to tell our listeners who you are and what you're doing here.
What are you doing here?
Okay, this got hostile very fast, and I'm into it. Hi, I'm, I guess, the co-host of Everything to Guppy, a show where we talk about a video game about a little boy killing his mother so he can climb into her womb and then kill the devil.
Yep.
That's a show I do with Gary Butterfield. We go item by item through the 500 or so items in The Binding of Isaac. Mm-hmm. It is a very stupid show, and I generally don't recommend people listen to it, but you might like it.
See, I've been listening to Duck Feed podcasts for a long time, and I love The Binding of Isaac.
Yeah.
So when you guys started doing Binding of Isaac podcast, like, that's a no-brainer for me. I love it. I love you guys' sense of humor. I love the tangents you guys go off on. There was an episode of your show. I have no clue what number it was, so I can't really recommend for people to go listen to this one specific episode, nor really would I just recommend this one episode. But there's an episode you guys started doing poetry.
There was a whole week of poetry week. Yeah.
Yes. That had to have been probably in the top 5 hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life.
Well, that's very nice to hear.
So good. So good. So yeah. Keep up the good work. You guys are awesome. But you mentioned, you guys have mentioned that you either play D&D or have played D&D in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to maybe tell us how you got into tabletop gaming, what your experiences are, that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think like a lot of people, I had my first tabletop gaming experience in, I think, late middle school, I want to say, sitting at Brian McGivern's table in Terre Haute, Indiana, eating so many Doritos. I would bring a bag of Doritos and someone else would bring a bag of Doritos, and then I would probably eat 75% of the Doritos. And that does some amazing things to a stomach, I will just say.
Sure.
Oh, jeez.
Just that much pure cornmeal.
A single Dorito chip gives me heartburn, so I can't imagine a whole bag at this point.
Yeah. No, you just gotta push through that burn. That burn means you're doing something right.
Mm-hmm. And that was we were playing second edition. Way back when, and that campaign ended the way I think most campaigns played by kids of that age end, which is that I annoyed Brian so much, I think when we went to go see the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes remake, that he decided he never wanted to see me again. And thus ended the campaign abruptly.
Oh my.
Okay, well, good luck, or good job, I guess, and good luck, you know.
Yeah, it's a social form of Rock's Fall. Everybody dies.
Sure. So you started in second edition. Have you played all the editions since then? Have there been any that you didn't?
Oh no, there's a big gap there. I didn't get although I read a lot of source books. I didn't find anybody to play with again for probably the next, I want to say 15 years.
Okay.
So I missed third edition. I missed all the drama around 4th edition.
Sure.
And then finally found a group about 2 years ago to settle back in with. We started with Dungeon World, and then after that first campaign wrapped up, we moved into 5e.
Okay, cool. How do you like 5e?
I think it's great. I think it's the most clearly designed to be a game.
Yeah.
All of these, that's kind of it's lost the war game roots a little bit.
Mm-hmm. A little bit.
But it's also not trying to be the weird board game thing that 4 was, by all accounts.
Yeah. Are there any role-playing games other than D&D that you've had any significant playtime with?
Every year with that same group, I run a game of Dread, which I love dearly. That's our kind of Halloween celebration.
Sure.
If anybody's not familiar, Dread is a horror game designed for one-shots where all hard, there's no dice, you just play Jenga.
Sure.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then if you knock the tower over, your character is dead.
Right.
And then the big cool mechanical thing is you can intentionally knock it over, and instead of just dying, you get to control the narrative of how you go out. So it creates all these really tense moments of sacrificing myself for the team.
Sure. So Jeff and I both started playing D&D in 3rd edition. Like I'd played some computer games before that I think were 2nd edition, but we started playing together in 3rd edition. And that's where most of our experience comes from. But, we're both loving 5th edition.
Yeah.
And, we've played a little bit of other games, but nothing really, like most of our experience is D&D. And also most of our questions come from D&D. So that's primarily what we talk about, but we're always open to questions and discussion from other games as well. So I guess let's go ahead and jump into this episode then. I'll try to make this fairly simple. I want you to imagine you're going on a road trip.
Okay.
And you're riding along in your car, and then you both think, oh no, we don't know how to get to our destination. So you pull out a little magical box that you ask it, hey, Siri or whatever, how do I get to my destination? And then this little magical box starts telling you the directions. It tells you turn right, so you turn right. It tells you turn left. And then it starts taking you down some paths that you didn't know you were going to be going this way. And you start to wonder, where are we going? And so you say, hey Siri, where are you taking us? And the little magical box says, turn right to turn into the dragon's horde.
I was waiting for one of our phones to go off when you said "Hey Siri," but neither of us have iPhones. So.
I was trying to decide in the moment whether I should, because in case that was not obvious, I didn't plan that out.
Sure.
I was trying to decide. I was trying to decide whether to go with an actual name for a GPS device, or if I should make one up that is dragon themed. I don't know.
Yeah, what would be the Siri of the D&D world?
So I just went with Siri. And hey, there's in The Witcher, there's a character named Siri, right?
Yeah, no,
so.
perfect.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just like, is this Shadowrun? Because this techno dystopia is frightening me.
So today's item was submitted by Deborah Soar via Discord, and she put it on the Discord, and I zhuzhed it up a little bit. Like hers was just a few sentences. I kind of expanded on it a little bit to make it a little bit more of a format that we might use. But this item is the Demon Box.
Sounds good.
There you go. Yeah. See what could possibly go wrong if you're using a Demon Box.
That seems like bad marketing. Friendship box.
Friendship box, exactly. So, legends from long ago tell of a woman named Pandora who possessed a magical box that was never to be opened under any circumstances. One day, Pandora's curiosity got the best of her, and she opened the box, releasing all manner of demons and horrors into the world. The ornate box you see before you is said to be that box. But even if the legends are true, that doesn't explain the fact that the box has no apparent means of opening, nor does it explain the presence inside that seems eager to communicate. So the Demon Box is a charred black, softball-sized cube with a demonic face on each of its 6 sides. It is sentient, and periodically, one of these 6 demonic faces will spit out a piece of parchment with writing on it. The languages of these communications may vary with each instance, but the box knows all forms of written communication, including class-only languages like thieves can't. A person who responds to these messages by writing a response and feeding the parchment back into the demonic face will receive an offer. In exchange for feeding the box magic items, the box will grant otherworldly aid, left up to the DM to adjudicate, though often in the form of duplicating the effects of appropriate spells, and not necessarily the spells the user had in mind. The more powerful or rare the item fed to the box, the more powerful the effect. The box is capable of devouring items of any size. The logistics of this are not known. Any item fed to the box is lost forever. Though it will never reveal this to a user, once the box has consumed 20 magic items, it will open, and its occupant, the pit fiend Pandora, will be let loose upon the world.
Oh no.
So let me ask both of you a question.
Sure.
Let's say you found a box, and periodically a little message came out of it, and it asked you to do things for it. Would you?
Are we talking in the context of my actual life? Or within some sort of adventuring scenario?
Go with both. Either one. Either one.
I feel like in my real life, I would assume I was being set up by Jamie Kennedy or some other, or Ashton Kutcher, or some other show prankster.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think I would just say, no thank you, Magic Box. But I'm a coward.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I feel like, yeah, in real life, I would be intrigued, but ultimately I would probably step away.
I would probably take it somewhere to crack it open.
Okay. Yeah. Honestly, that's probably what most people would do. I guess in a role playing sense, if your character finds a box that speaks to them and asks them to do things,
Yeah. I mean,
how long would you follow its commands?
Forever.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I want to see where it goes. You know,
Sure.
the DM is like, yeah, like giving me a box that talks to me. I'm gonna have a nice long conversation with it, get to know it.
Yeah, D&D is a chance to make bad decisions to make interesting things happen. So
Yeah.
There you go. That's a good way to think of it. I like the idea of, because this is basically a sentient magic item. And I like sentient magic items. I especially like when you don't know the sentient magic item's agenda. It's one thing to have an item that, oh yeah, it's basically just an extension of you. You have the same goals. It just gives you cool powers, and also you can talk to it. That's one thing. You know, that's neat. I've put items like that into games before. But I kind of like it more when you don't know if you can trust the item. You don't have a reason not to trust the item, but you are reminded that it has its own goals and you have your own goals. So I kind of like that.
yeah, I kind of touched on this before. I almost feel like the demon box is really tipping its hand a little too much. Like,
Okay.
I'd be like, maybe angel faces.
Okay.
Maybe don't be charred in black.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, be a little less conspicuous.
Maybe just like an innocuous face, just like a guy.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe it's charred in black because the last person that had it tried to burn it.
Ooh.
You know, it's got some battle damage.
A little bit. Have either of you seen the Netflix Death Note movie?
The live action.
The live action one, yeah.
No.
I have not. I'm familiar with the series as a whole, but I have not watched the Adam Wingard, I think, directed that.
I think so, yeah. Well, it's real bad. The
Sure.
like the Japanese show as well as the Japanese adaptations are pretty good, but the American, the Netflix one, is really bad. But one thing that I liked from it is that, for anybody who's not familiar with Death Note, it was originally an anime about this guy who finds a book, and anytime if you write someone's name in the book, that person will die. You can give it instructions on how they die, but basically you just write a name. If you don't specify, they die of a heart attack like 5 minutes later. And then the main character gets kind of power hungry and uses it to try and, like, in his mind, make the world a better place, and so on and so on. But this is a demonic artifact, and like he has a demon that follows the book around and he can communicate with whatever. Anyway, in the American version, one thing that I liked about it is that the book itself, the Death Note, has stuff that other people have written in it, like instructions. And so, like, a lot of them are the ravings of a madman, but like some of them tell you, like, don't trust the demon. Like the demon Ryuk is the demon that's like tied to this Death Note. Some of them say, like, do not trust Ryuk. You can't trust him. He's evil. He'll kill you, whatever. I like the idea of a magical artifact that you can tell previous owners have had it because they have tried desperately to leave messages for future owners of that item.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of little things about this item, about like the theming of this item that I really like.
It'd be like if the One Ring had a guest book.
There you go. There you go.
It's like, it kept me alive for a really long time, but dang, did it do some horrors to my skin.
Yeah.
So,
Like, this one trick your dermatologist hates.
right.
Yeah.
Wearing a ring of pure, unadulterated evil.
So the effects of this item are kind of vague. They, I'm trying to think of when Deborah Soar actually wrote it out. I think it was even more vague, but I wrote it out as it will give you otherworldly aid, and then that's up to the DM to adjudicate exactly how that works. But it could be maybe that you give it a magic item and then it grants a wish for you, maybe like a weak wish, but a wish.
Yeah.
Or maybe even something you didn't necessarily say you wanted, but it does it for you. Like, that guy at the DMV really pissed you off that day. And then next you see him on the side of the road and he's getting arrested or something. Okay, cool. I don't know who put those drugs in his car, but sure.
Probably not my demon box.
Probably not my demon box.
Certainly
exactly.
not the box with the demonic faces.
And then, maybe I can imagine that as it goes on, the things it asks you to do get more severe, but also the aid that it grants you gets more, I don't know, dark. Mm-hmm. Like you wanted $1 million and you have $1 million, but like it's got someone's blood all over it. So
sure,
I don't know.
And that's hard to clean. Like,
it is.
You need to find a money launderer. Sorry.
It's that's perfectly fine.
Wow.
There you go.
This is interesting because it's a monkey's paw that wants you to use it, because like the moral of the monkey's paw is don't wish on a monkey's paw, dummy.
No, the moral of the monkey's paw is go ahead and wish for whatever, right?
It's to your heart's
no care needed.
Just save one wish for undo, Control Z, Control
Z. Exactly.
This is really dumb and it dates me, but what this really makes me think of is y'all seen The Neverending Story 2?
A long time ago. Is that the one with Jack Black, or is that the one before Jack Black?
The third one's with Jack Black, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, the basic premise of that movie is that Bastian is given wishing powers.
Yeah.
And uses them for such things as spray paint cans.
Okay.
But every time he wishes, it just deletes one of his memories.
Oh, right. Okay, I have seen that one.
Yeah, there's like a gachapon machine of memories that like ka-chunks every time he uses it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just interesting to me because this is a box that wants you to use its power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's all kind of hooks you can build out of this. You could, like, coming into the aftermath of this would be interesting as an adventuring party. Like, you go to the, the rich guy's mansion. Everything's gone right for him for so long. And you get there and it's just a bloodbath.
Sure.
And you just have, like, this cracked egg sitting there.
I'm trying to think of what the cracked egg would be.
Oh, the box. The opened box. Like,
I see. Okay, so you're seeing the aftermath of the demon coming out.
No, he made omelet.
Okay.
Yeah, he made omelets. Yeah, he wished for a lot of omelets.
I was trying to think if there was like some, I don't know, some fairy tale about some. I don't know. I misunderstood that, but I think finding the aftermath of any sort of mysterious magic item is a great plot hook.
Yeah. Or it could be like if the box is left alone for enough, like if it's without an owner for a long enough time, it kind of like resets the 20 item counter sort of thing.
Sure.
So you can come upon it and it's like 1 or 2 items away from being released. So it's like desperate. Oh. So it's like it's a little bit more like frantic about its commands and stuff. It's like
I need 2 items within the next week or this will all be lost.
Right, or something like that. So like the closer and closer it gets to escaping, the more sort of like excited and desperate the demon becomes.
This is also interesting in terms of how you use it as a DM, because like, do you just flood your campaign with like low-level magic items to like tempt people? Like, here's 4 extra stones of far speech.
Right.
Yeah.
Nom 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 nom.
Oh, here's a dull gray ion stone. Doesn't do anything except float around your head.
No, I like these things. Woo.
Yeah.
Because it's working a little bit at cross purposes, because you're already sacrificing. Like, and the idea is you want the sacrifice to be meaningful. You want to be like, oh wow, we are doomed right now. I need some sort of like mass healing. I'm going to feed this probably not my +3 sword or whatever, but something potent.
Sure.
Yeah.
But it wants to be used.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be like, well, why don't you just throw that gray ion stone in me, and I'll get you a create water spell or something.
Sure. I will keep you from starving to death if you give me that crappy thing over there.
Yeah, but knowing that the better the item, the better the effect. You'd be like trying to like save it up, basically. I guess.
Sure.
Well, then again, you don't know how many uses it has, so you could just be tossing stuff in there just to get a little help here and there,
Yeah, spray paint can.
Yeah, yeah.
Or let's say you're the box. If you were trying to
wait a minute.
if you were trying to like coerce someone into feeding you magic items, maybe you can tell that they're getting suspicious. You could say, "Don't worry, I need 15 more magic items before I am let loose or whatever, and then they're like, okay, well, I'll just give him 14. Then, haha, it only needed 14.
Right.
This box is smart.
There you go.
Wait a minute. Let's think from the box's perspective.
Yeah. Let me roll up Demon Box as my next character class.
Right.
There you go.
Oh, wow. A whole campaign where you play as someone else's magic sword.
Oh, yeah.
Well, so we had a magic item a few months ago that was a sentient rapier, I think.
I think that's right, yeah.
And somehow we got onto the topic of the spirit in this rapier was trying to get into the hands of a powerful spellcaster to then trick the spellcaster into swapping souls with the sword.
Yeah, something like that. Or like, was it a weapon that you can store your soul into or something? I can't remember. And in any case, it was basically like the intelligence inside this item was, once an adventurer or is trying to get out of the sword somehow and like swap bodies or something like that.
And that wasn't in the text that was sent to us. Like we read into the text to come to that to that conclusion. I don't know.
We tend to go a little far with our
sometimes
with our magic items.
Sometimes.
Sure.
All right. Well, once again, that was the Demon Box submitted by Deborah Soar via Discord. So thank you, Deborah Soar. Jeff, if anybody wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Horde, or if they wanted to submit questions for us to discuss, or stories for the funeral pyre, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Discord at
See, I don't know if you can I don't think you can easily.
You can't really easily say.
Just go to like our Facebook, our subreddit. We've got instructions on how to. If you can't get to the Discord, send us an email.
Yeah, there you go.
We will get you taken care of.
Yeah, you can request a link to the Discord through our email.
Yes,
I think that'd be the easiest way to do it.
And Will, did you want to once again tell our listeners like about where they can find you? Anything like anything you're working on, any that sort of stuff?
Yeah, sure. Let me promote my quote-unquote brand. Probably the easiest way to get pure uncut me is Everything to Guppy, which is part of the Duckfeed Network. You can support the network at patreon.com/duckfeedtv, and I'll get like a penny of it, which is totally fine.
Sure.
You can also read my writing at the AV Club. Just look for my byline, I guess. I recently wrote something like 800 or 900 words of Frasier fanfic that I was paid to write.
Awesome.
So, they don't tell me not to be stupid, so I'm stupid a lot.
Well, good job.
Yeah, I'm also on Twitter at PlumberDuck.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Frasier fanfic. What?
Yeah,
I'm really tempted to go into this because I love Frasier.
So do I, but Kelsey Grammer is walking around like he's been talking about a reboot for a while.
Oh.
And now he says he has been given 6 different Frasier reboot ideas.
Wow.
So I just kind of extemporaneized, if that's a word,
it
on
is
the
now.
idea.
Coined and minted it. That's fine.
There you go. All right. Before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today.
All right.
As always, we're giving away a copy of Chapel on the Cliffs, courtesy of Goblin Stone. Chapel on the Cliffs is a low-level 5th edition adventure. It's got some spookalies and some dookalies in there. Got at least one chapel and at least 2 cliffs.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, because it's pluralized, so
gotcha.
It's got to be at least 2 cliffs in there.
Well, cliffs,
I think cliffs is a feature.
Right,
well,
like the cliffs, like the mountains. It's like there's not a single mountain.
Well, hey, if extemporaneized can be a word,
okay, coming to me, that's cool.
All right, wow,
I like this.
All right, so
yeah,
Jeff,
we're really hostile towards our guests here on the Interparty Conflict.
I feel like I brought it. If anyone listens to Guppy, it's an immensely hostile show. So.
Yes, sure. All right, so Jeff, who is our winner this week?
Our winner this week is Peter K.
Whoa, winner.
Gobble, gobble, gobble.
Yes, congratulations, Peter K. You should be getting that in your email within the next few days. If you don't, let me know. And be sure to check your spam folder. And be sure to leave Goblin Stone a review, because they can continue to make great products and make them better and better if they get people's feedback.
Peter K., I'm proud of you.
And Jeff, if anybody wanted to enter this drawing, how would they do so?
They can send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Chapel on the Cliffs in the subject line.
Yes. And then just a couple more quick things. Our show's brought to you by our wonderful patrons. If you go to patreon.com/interpartyconflict, we've got a few different tiers on there with various rewards so you can help out the show and get some cool content in return. And then also check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Crit Academy, Justin, Ian, and Brandon make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. D&D Character Lab, they make characters every week and then debate whose character is better. And then Brute Force and Ignorance, I don't think are making episodes anymore, but they are an actual play podcast on the network as well. So enough of all the plugs. Do you guys want to go ahead and get into some questions?
Sure.
Yes, please.
Cool.
Our first question comes from Collins on Discord. Have you or any players you've had made choices that led to their background feature being nullified, such as a folk hero being shunned by their village or a criminal turning their back on the Thieves Guild?
Yeah. I personally have not had it happen with any of my characters. Mm-hmm. I've had it happen in a group I was in, and then also I have an Adventure Zone reference that I think I might have even referenced a few weeks ago, but I can bring that up again as well. Will, do you have anything off the top about this?
Off the top, not specifically background feature. I did. I ran a cleric where I built him entirely around the inability to cast the resurrection spell.
Okay.
Built into Dungeon World, which I was like, maybe I don't want resurrection to be like a simple thing in this world. So I talked to my DM about it, and that ended up really guiding the character to being basically an insane worshiper of the idea of life and obsessed with the idea of bringing people back and being unable to do it.
Interesting. That's really cool.
I can think of characters I've made that have based around the background only to find out that can be kind of lame.
yeah. Like your Age of Worms character.
My Age of Worms character, yeah, where I was like, yeah, he's like a hunter-gatherer sort, like one of the... What is the background in 5th edition? It's just like Outlander or something.
Outlander, yeah.
Yeah. So it basically leaned fully into Outlander, only to find out that
this doesn't make for a fun character.
This doesn't make for, yeah. It's
at all.
It's like, oh yeah, I'll gather the food
for
our camp tonight, and it's like, yeah, that's a feature in the background. We can just say you get enough food.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but I wanted to go out and track an animal and hunt it down and stuff like that and skin it and do I get to roll checks for that? It's like, no. That's,
yeah, just hand wave it.
Yeah, you're fine.
I guess if we were to expand this a little bit to talk about not necessarily class features, but just your whole character concept kind of got nullified by something.
Yeah.
I had a character that I've talked about on the show plenty of times, but his name was Artemis Red Sleeves, and he was the whole concept for the character was just a guy he's just a scrubby little nobody who wants to start a family and become a noble and just retire as an established person in this fantasy world. I want to have quote unquote realistic goals for the setting. Mm-hmm. It wasn't that he wanted to go get a giant pile of gold. It's not that he wanted to kill a dragon. He just wanted to gain favor with the king and then establish a family line. That was his whole goal as a character.
Yeah, aiming firmly for the upper middle class.
Exactly. And then halfway through the campaign, he died and was brought back from the dead. And when he died, there was a brief period where we didn't think it would be possible to bring him back because, Will, kind of like what you were saying, it had been established that there was not resurrection magic, at least at the time. And then when we finally did discover that there was we discovered the first raise dead spell, basically. I was trying to think of how the thought of how the experience of dying would affect him as a character. Mm-hmm. And it made me go in a much darker direction with that character. And in my opinion, made the character way more than just a boring, okay, he wants to start a family and settle down. It now became he doesn't realize it, but he is going to become the world's first vampire when he dies for real. And so eventually when he did die and he came back as a vampire, he used his previous motivation of wanting to become an established noble and was like, okay, how can I do this but for an eternity?
Right.
And so then it became much less about starting a normal family, and now it's I want to start an undead empire of vampires. basically. And also establishing his family as a family line that would never be able to be stopped by anything ever.
Yeah.
And
it went from a higher upper middle class to God.
Well, just below God.
Just below God.
He didn't want to be king. He wanted to be the guy that is always like the king's right-hand man, no matter what.
Sure.
Yeah, I think in this parlance, it's vizier.
Sure. Exactly. And so it took what was a realistic goal and then turned it up to like 12. Not even just 11, like past the joking maximum to like no, like supernaturally extreme.
Right.
One more example that I wanted to mention. I do think I brought this up on the show a few weeks ago, but I have to assume that not everybody listens to every episode of our show. Will, do you listen to the Adventure Zone, or have you ever listened to the Adventure Zone?
I have. In fact, one of my great points of privilege is that at one point, Merle bought one of my fantasy Costco items.
Oh, that's awesome. Which item?
He's never used it. It's the amulet of the laughing god that like kills you if you make a bad joke, basically.
I remember that, and I remember them debating whether to let him have it because then they felt that everything was going to be a shtick.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Well, cool. So after they finish their first story arc and their current story arc, they're playing. It's not D&D, but it's I think it's called Monster of the Week.
Yeah.
And when they first made their characters, each of the three players, they made, okay, this is my character, blah blah blah. I'm doing this. One of the players, Justin McElroy, was playing he was a forest ranger, but his whole thing is that he is the chosen one. Like. In his backstory, he was contacted by this otherworldly entity a long time ago who told him he had this destiny, and they gave him this entity gave him this intelligent sword that speaks to him and like trained him on how to sword fight. And he's like supernaturally tough and so on and so on. And then there was a point at the end of one of their story arcs where the player went to the DM and said, "Hey, I think I need to change something about my character." And then in the story, he loses his connection to this otherworldly entity. His sword breaks, and he loses all of his chosen one powers. And so story-wise, he is no longer the chosen one. Mechanics-wise, he now has a different class. He's not his original class. He swapped over entirely to this other class where the whole thing of that class is that he is an ordinary person. There is nothing special about him.
Yeah, he's Xander from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Exactly. And so he went from being the chosen one to being explicitly not the chosen one. And so he's had to adapt to not being super powerful anymore to just being a normal dude.
Yeah, and he has a twin brother that sometimes plays a character in the show.
Is that a Buffy reference?
That's a very specific Buffy reference.
Yeah.
Okay.
The actor who plays Xander has a twin brother who, on a couple episodes, I want to say, like the twin brother like played a character that is basically like his clone or something.
I think just one episode. This is a very deep cut. Yeah. Yeah. In terms of Adventure Zone, like I love the McElroys. I've had the chance to interview them for work, and that was a thrill.
Yeah.
But I admire Justin so much for like taking a power hit because it's better storytelling.
Yeah.
Because like we talk about like losing a background feature because of like the progress of events in any other medium, that's just character development.
Yeah.
Like a folk hero being shunned by their village, that's just like a good character beat in someone's like story.
Yeah.
It's just when it's written down on your page, like, like even going so far as like White Wolf games where like you have a resources thing that you paid character points for that you can still like lose, like if you lose all your money. It can be very hard in games like this because the tendency is to want to make yourself more powerful because that's sort of like built into everything, like character progression.
Yeah.
But I think the better storytelling can be to become weaker in many cases.
Now I want to know if there are any RPGs out there where you start off powerful and then lose abilities.
It's like it's just like the Metroidvania thing where like you start the game with all the power-ups you got from the previous game, but then you lose them all so that you can have that progression in the game again.
Yeah.
I think I literally was just reading a TV tropes. I think it was maybe one of the White Wolf, like Kindred of the East books.
Okay.
Where like you start out as like a demonically possessed monster that is just started on the road to redemption.
Mm-hmm.
And every level you are losing demonic features and like losing power, but becoming a better person.
Okay. Huh. This discussion is making me think of the Terrible RPG. Have you ever heard of, have you ever heard of the Terrible RPG, TEAR?
I don't think I have.
So I talk about it on the show often because I think it's a it's a rules light RPG. You can jump into it in like 5 minutes. It's real simple. The idea is it's meant for one shots, but the idea is that you have a sheet of paper. You can write out, I think it's 6 skills, 6 of any kind of skill you can think of, fitting the setting and the whatever. But like, let's say you're going to be playing a fantasy game. You can write down sword fighting. You can write down archery. You can write down fire magic, whatever, any 6 skills you can think of. You write them out on the sheet of paper, wherever on the sheet of paper you want to write them. Then while you're playing, whenever there is going to be a challenge that you need to overcome, in order to use a skill, you have to tear off part of the sheet in one single motion. So like most of the time it's going to be like a strip or something. You have to tear off part of the sheet that contains at least one letter of the skill you're trying to use. So eventually, as you use one skill, and if you tear it off, if it is over, there's like a little 1-inch square. If it is over that size, if it completely covers up that size, you succeed. If you fail, you have to do it another time, and then keep doing it until you successfully have one piece that can successfully cover that square. But then as you go on, as you use a skill, the fewer times you'll be able to use it again. Like you'll eventually run out of that skill. And sometimes you'll have to, because of where you position them on the sheet, because positioning your skills on the sheet is a skill in and of itself, then sometimes you will have to sacrifice part of one skill to get to another one. Because there's only 4 edges and so on. So something's going to have to be in the middle somewhere. And so kind of similar to that, as the game goes on, you are, I guess, getting less powerful because you have a set number of resources and you are using them up as the game goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I like to speak to my previous point. That's story structure.
Yeah.
Like when you watch a movie, it is rarely the protagonist getting more and more powerful and problems getting easier and easier to deal with.
Yeah.
It's sacrifice. It's like making the choice to give something up in order to, because that's what you had to do to make the next beat of your story work. In many ways, it's much more satisfying than like the typical like level 1 to level 20 like, oh, now we're gods kind of thing.
Yeah. That makes me feel like D&D's progression is real weird. Because
Sure.
that's a great point. You never really think about that. Maybe there will be something like, you're watching Infinity War or whatever, and like Thor shows up at the end fight with like a big new weapon and he's all powerful and whatnot. But generally speaking, that is not always, that's not the only way to progress. Oftentimes the story structure does start off with the characters at their most powerful, and then it just gets less and less as it goes on.
Yeah.
I'll say one more thing about this question. I have a friend, Chris, that I've played with many times in the past, and he had a character in one of our long-running campaigns that started. He had a character with amnesia. He had a character that was like a long-haired male sorcerer with some fighting skills, and then so on and so. I think he was like a half dragon or something. A whole bunch of we started at like 8th level, so he had a whole lot of stuff going in, and then there was a point right before the end of the campaign where his character got his memory back and realized that whatever happened that made him lose his memory, he was not a half-dragon male sorcerer. He was a female human sorcerer and a red dragon that merged together.
Okay.
Interesting.
And so at that point that he split into 2 people, and I think each of them, if I'm remembering it right, each of them had some of the traits of the original character. But it was only, I mean, I don't know if that quite counts for this question,
sure.
But
that's definitely a big change.
But it was definitely a point where he had to think, what can I do with this character that will end this character's storyline? And so he had to decide, if I were to take something away from the character, what would I do with it? How would I do it? And so on and so on. So anyway, it feels like a similar kind of, especially since the DM had a part in it as well. It wasn't just the player being like, oh, I think this happened.
Right.
It does feel kind of similar to the spirit of the question, I think.
Our next question comes from some guy named @PlumberDuck. This was on Twitter.
That sounds like a nonsense name made up by a dumb 13-year-old who didn't realize he'd be saddled with it for the rest of his life.
Yep.
I think I know how that goes.
Yeah. My username for almost everything is Ultima Gabe, which is from when I was 13.
Right.
And your love of virtue.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
This question was, what are your thoughts on RPG game books as literature? Have you ever read an adventure module or supplement book with no intention of playing it?
Yeah. Plumber Duck or whoever, do you have anything? Do you have anything?
Yeah. No, I'll out myself. Yeah. I posed this question because this is how I interacted with RPGs for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like in that big 15-year lacuna. I am a big nerd for rules. Mm-hmm. Okay. I read, I'm the guy at regular gaming group where I'm like, yeah, I'll go read the rule book and then explain to everybody else how to play it.
You're doing God's work.
I try not to be the evil version of that where I'm like, actually, you were supposed to roll a D6.
That's tough. That's tough to keep yourself from doing.
I mean, life is a process of like trying to keep your demons at bay, right?
Yeah, or your demon boxes at bay.
Right. I was going to say try to keep your demons in your box, but go on.
Sure. So there are a lot of game books that I have read, especially I mentioned White Wolf stuff while we were talking about the previous question. Mm-hmm. I have played, I think, about 1 minute of Vampire the Masquerade during like that early flirtation when I was a kid. But I have read so many White Wolf source books.
Okay.
Because those are very, and there's two different things. Because one is that they are lore heavy.
Yeah.
And I do like the lore, but I would never in a million years read one of the novels, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because I don't want to read about other characters doing stuff. I want to read about like potential situations.
Sure.
It's a bit like, it's actually like in video games, a lot like reading strategy guides and kind of seeing how stuff can play out.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I can understand that.
There's also just, I love the idea of rules as storytelling. In this case, something like, are you familiar with Unknown Armies?
No.
Mm-mm.
Unknown Armies is a sort of post-modern-y game. It takes place in the modern world with like different magical effects. And there's basically, in that game, there are two ways you can get supernatural powers. One is you can pick kind of like these archetypes, like the messenger or the fool, things like that, and try to live according to those principles, and that will give you the powers associated with them.
Okay.
The other is straight up magic, and the rule in that game is that magic, by definition, is an act of insanity. Okay. So that all magic must, like, for instance, they have, like, one of the base kind of magics in that game is, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically pain magic.
Oh, okay.
So you can get a minor charge, which is, like, basically a regular, like, maybe a 1st through 3rd level spell, by causing yourself some kind of non-permanent pain. But in those games, to do a full, like a big, like world-changing spell, you have to like chop off a hand.
Whoa. Okay.
Like it's a very maybe self-consciously dark game, but the thing I like about that is the idea that magic is literally imposing an insane worldview on a rational world, and none of that comes from the lore that is built into the rules of the game.
Okay.
You must do something that shows you are out of step with reality in order to impose an alternate reality on the world.
Okay, interesting.
Huh.
So those are kind of like two different branches of storytelling when it comes to like RPG game books. Like there's like, I've been reading the White Wolf Gehenna book right now, which is how they ended the first World of Darkness.
Okay.
Which is all these apocalyptic scenarios, which are interesting to read because it's literally, here's how we end 10 years of published content and suggest how people like destroy their campaigns.
It's like, yeah, here's a way to end everything. Go for it.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's 3 ways to end because they give you a bunch of different options. There's one option which is literally like Vampire Rapture for people who want to play like, this was always a game about spiritualism and redemption. So let's give people a chance to like if you really repent your vampire nature, you can become human again. And then there's the other one that is like, nope, all the humans find out and the ancient gods awaken, and it's full Lovecraftian monstrousness. Try to survive.
Yeah. It's like you're stuck in a field of oops-a-daisies.
But yeah, I think you can learn. There's a story in the rules sometimes, though, that I think is very expresses a worldview that I think is very interesting.
Okay. Yeah, that's really cool. I don't know if I don't know if I would ever read the rules, like the rule books as literature, but I do enjoy reading like adventure modules. I haven't really done it much in a while, but I especially like back when I was really getting into like D&D 3.5 and I was just like eager for a game to play, I would read a lot of adventure modules then. I especially liked going back and reading like first and second edition modules because it was less about reading the rules, because those editions kind of had fewer rules, and also I was just glossing over the rules anyway because I wasn't playing those editions. But then I could actually focus on like what the story was and so on. I remember there were some Planescape books that I acquired on the internet a long time ago, and it was fascinating just to read like what this world is like, you know, with like Sigil and all the like battle between Vecna and the other gods and so on and so on. It was really, really cool just to read all this history. And then also the fact that it was D&D, it was like part of the game that I've been playing by a few years by this point. So it was really interesting to see what sort of history the game was built on, you know.
What's the endless dungeon, or what's
World's Largest Dungeon?
World's Largest Dungeon. I want to say Steve had taken that and started like reading it basically, maybe not as literature, but just sort of reading through it just to see like what it would entail to play a huge dungeon like that.
Yeah, like I think just about anybody who's like had an interest in D&D has at some point like looked through Tomb of Horrors.
Yeah.
Just like I don't think there are a lot of people who really want to play through like the old school like Orb of Annihilation version of that.
Yeah.
But it's great to read.
Yeah, I've that was one of the modules that I definitely remember reading like back when I was really getting into D&D. And then at one point I decided I wanted to try to run it. Like there was a 3.5 version that was available on the Wizards of the Coast website. And then that made me realize, oh, this is actually a really bad dungeon.
Oh yeah, no, it's terribly designed.
Yeah. It is not meant to be fun. It is not meant to be interesting. It's just meant to have a whole bunch of gotchas.
Right.
Well, it's designed for like when people used to have like 6 packs of characters, like they were playing Paranoia or something.
Yeah.
Which one of the times we played it, we kind of played it with a like roguelike game in this sort of game style in mind.
Kind of, yeah. So like I had them start purposely very low level because I didn't want it to be an appropriately leveled dungeon. I wanted it to be like a meat grinder. So then every time they would die, once everybody was dead, I would snap my fingers, they would start over at the beginning. They could use whatever knowledge they had. They could remake their character if they wanted to. And then they would have to quickly be like, okay, we do this to get back to where they were. And then, okay, I'm going to try this and so on. And so it was much more of a game and much less of like, okay, we love our characters. We're going to really explore the role playing here. No, right. It was just like, go in, see if you can find your way to the end of the dungeon. And in my opinion, that made for a much more enjoyable Tomb of Horrors experience.
Yeah, because it was a process of elimination sort of thing. We're trying to figure out how to get through things, but we were able to make stupid decisions and not go 10-foot pole, square by square.
Exactly.
I put pressure on this plate. Does anything happen? No. Okay. Mark it with a piece of chalk.
Right.
It's like
because you didn't have to worry about your character you've been playing for the whole campaign dying. You could just try it out. Yeah. If you die, okay, well, I'll just start over in a little bit.
Yeah. And like we still didn't even get through it. I think we got to like the first.
You got to the spoilers, false lich.
Right.
You beat the false lich.
Oh, pretty far.
And then we after that point, I had it be that anytime you started over, it would be from that point. So you did make some progress.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a fun way to treat an intentionally like unpleasant to play game.
Yeah.
I just it frustrates me whenever people are like, "Hey, what are the best classic modules?" And people are like, "Tomb of Horrors." No, it is not the best. It isn't fun.
Yeah, it's made to reference, like you
Sure,
know, it's
sure.
a good thing to
It's
kind of put into a thing, like, oh yeah, like we just got back from the Tomb of Horrors. Like, really? How did you survive it? Like, we just didn't go in, you know?
Yeah.
One of my short stories that I wrote for our Patreon was some of my characters from my fiction going through the first room of the Tomb of Horrors. So it was a lot of fun. Okay, yeah. So I've read more adventure modules than like rule books, but I definitely enjoy reading them because, you know, it's bits of history, it's bits of story.
Yeah.
You can always gain something from reading the book that you can then put into a future game.
Mm-hmm. It's also, I just like reading about games I'll never play. Like,
Sure.
Don't Rest Your Head is another one that I don't think I'll ever get people together for, but
Okay. What is that?
that's, the idea is you, your character becomes afflicted with insomnia. Have you ever read Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman?
Yes, I love Neverwhere. Oh my goodness.
It's very influenced by that. Like, you end up in this shadow version of the city that is populated by almost like Alice in Wonderland-y kind of very literal. Like, there's like, I can't remember most of they're all like bad jokes, but like bad jokes as eldritch horrors.
Okay, like in Neverwhere, it's in London, and so like the district of Knightsbridge is like an actual bridge underneath London that has like you'll get like attacked by a demon or something if you try to cross it or whatever.
Yeah, it's very similar to that in tone, but it's and then they have a supplement called Don't Lose Your Mind, which is about tapping into your own madness.
Okay.
And it's basically just 26 sample powers you could have and the monster you turn into if you overuse it.
Okay, that's
nice.
That sounds really cool.
The other one of these that if I can go on for a slight...
Yeah, go for it. However long you want.
Yeah.
Sure. There is a game I have never played, and I don't think anyone else has ever played. Like, it was designed, I think, mostly as an exercise called Vampires by a guy named, I think, Victor Gisbers. It's something like that. It's I'm not sure of the exact pronunciation. I encountered it because it was on Greg Kostikian's Play This Thing blog, which I used to read a lot. Vampires is a game where if you know what it's about, you're not allowed to play it, basically.
Oh, one of those. Okay.
Yeah. You like the rules as written say all the characters are vampires. Vampires are by definition fueled by hurting people.
Okay.
And specifically hurting people who care about them. So the game as written plays out between like scenes of like competing with other vampires to like, you know, show dominance and like rise to the top of the pile of like this all this undead flesh. And then scenes of them with their quote unquote loved ones where they are getting like the more that person feels for you, whether it is hatred or love, the more power and blood you can draw from them. All of which is role played out.
Okay. Interesting.
Huh.
And then, so you play it, and then if you read the essay which is attached to it, which has a big spoiler, and the thing is, this has all disappeared off the internet. I looked for it last night.
Okay.
His site isn't up anymore, and it hasn't been mirrored anywhere as far as I can tell. The accompanying essay basically says, don't read this if you ever want to play this game. You cannot play this game correctly if you've read this essay. And it lays out that the only win condition for the game, because obviously what you are doing is role-playing abusive relationships.
Okay.
Essentially. Like, you are encouraged to make your partner feel as bad as you can or as dependent on you as you can. Mm-hmm. And the only way the game ever is supposed to end is when the players enter open rebellion against the DM.
Wow.
They straight up say, I refuse to like live with these mechanics. Because in the rules of the game, like the partners can never rise up. They are subjugated to the vampire. Mm-hmm. So the only way the game successfully ends is when the players refuse to follow the rules and literally say, I don't care what the text says. She kills him. Because she can't stand with this anymore.
Sure.
Does that particular person win, or is that just like an end point of the game? And
I think the group as a whole, basically, like the idea is the whole group should go into rebellion together.
Okay.
Again, it's a game. The reason I bring it up is because I don't know if anyone has ever played this game.
Yeah.
Because everybody just reads that first and it goes like, well, crap, now I can't play it.
Right.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, and it's not a pleasant game to play as written. Like, it's a really...
Right.
Like, even if you're like a really like White Wolfy kind of Vampire the Masquerade, I am the tortured Toreador kind of person, it's still about role-playing like objectively evil actions in like an emotionally real kind of way.
Right. It's like if somebody took, you know how you play a game of Monopoly and then it always ends in somebody like flipping the board. If they
Sure.
like distilled that down into a liquid and turned that liquid into a game.
Then why is it necessary to distill it into a liquid if they're going to turn it into a game?
Well, the liquid is blood, I guess, because you're playing vampires. Okay. I don't know.
Okay. I think I see the connections there.
So it's just like, yeah, like if you're trying to, yeah, like just to kind of condense that feeling of like ending a relationship over a game.
Yeah.
This is the game to play. But you have to spring it on somebody. They can't know ahead of time. You know, or is this like the perfect breakup game? Maybe.
Oh,
maybe like because the DM isn't supposed to know the rules either.
Okay.
Like it is supposed to organically emerge that everyone at the table gets so uncomfortable with what they're being asked to do by quote unquote the rules.
Yeah.
That they all come together to say, no, we're not. Like, and what would actually happen in real life is like people would like 20 minutes would be like, this is gross. You guys want to go play Smash Brothers?
Right.
Yeah. That's a heck of a game right there.
Jeez.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to bring everything down.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine.
It's something I read probably 10 years ago and has been living in my head ever since.
Yeah.
Because you're spreading it around. Just
I guess. Yeah.
I get that. Yep. All right. Our next question comes from Mary Sue on Discord. Do your characters have cameos in subsequent games?
Yeah. Will, how about do your characters have cameos in subsequent games?
Yeah, actually, like I was talking about, like my Dungeon World campaign that turned into the 5e campaign was very the 5e campaign was very explicitly a 50 years later sequel.
Okay.
To that, or maybe 20 years, I think.
Sure.
Very sort of prequels going into New Hope kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Living in the aftermath of like the big explosion at the end of the first campaign. Where I actually, I talked with my DM about it, like that same cleric I was talking about, who was basically a crazy worshiper of life, ended up becoming the big bad of the next, of the following campaign.
Okay.
Which was really fun to like play out. Yeah, I think I actually had some conflict with my DM about some of that because he was very gung-ho about this idea of like, oh, these are like historical characters now, and they had a big impact on the world.
Yeah.
And I played my character as though he could not care less about them.
Okay.
He's like, I'm trying to live my life. I do not want to like walk through the history of these people who were essentially terrorists because they blew up like the central government.
Because they're adventurers.
Right.
Yeah.
I do definitely have characters that have cameos in subsequent games. I've talked many, many, many times about my character Ichi, who through one means or another he turns up in every campaign I run, whether the players would ever realize it or not. But the thing is, I try as hard as I can never to make any of these feel like a DMPC or feel like a Mary Sue character. I always try to have them be small characters in the background, and that's it. If I ever do have Ichi show up in a game, it's like in a cameo role that someone could only even realize that it was Ichi if they were in the campaign where I played as him and several games afterwards.
Right. It's more of a like he walks in, smiles, and waves to the camera and walks out.
I mean, sort of. It's like the players are trying to gather information. Then I describe like, oh yeah, there's a guy at the bar. He tells you what you need to know. You notice that he has a sword that you've never seen before. That sort of thing. And so that's kind of the extent of most of his cameos. I mentioned my character Artemis Redsleeves, who kind of went off the rails of his original character concept. I like the big crazy overarching story that I have in my head. He is like one of the antagonists of, but I've never gotten to a point where that would ever come up in a game. And again, I don't ever want it to feel like, a Mary Sue character. I don't ever want someone to hear, oh, that's Gabe's old character from another campaign, and then have them roll their eyes and be like, oh yeah, tell me again how awesome he is. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's just like you're saying, Will, these characters make a big impact on the world. And so I like the idea of, if you find out that there's a character that had a big impact on the world, I like the idea of it being a character that I made and that I'm intimately familiar with, rather than just being, oh yeah, Ragnar the wizard is the big bad.
Well, because if it's a character that has a special significance in the world, you want to have it to have a special significance to more, to somebody. It might as well be you. It's like, so like at least somebody knows that this person is important. Sure. Not just in the fact that it's somebody who changed the game world, but
yeah. So I do always try to take measures to keep it from being like, here we go again. Like, all right, Gabe. Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about this. How awesome this character is. That is the least of my goals. I do not want that whatsoever.
Well, I'll just follow him into any bar he goes, because he has to buy, like, he's cursed to buy drinks.
That is true. He was cursed to buy drinks for everybody. Okay. Jeff, do you have any characters?
I mean, there are characters that have made, like, back when I played, like, second edition, back with, like, when I played with Steve, that, like, I'll always think about in the back of my mind if I'm ever trying to come up with an adventure or something like that. Which, I don't DM. I always just think about DMing.
Yeah. So I mean, hey, that's the first step to DMing.
Right. In my thoughts of DMing, I'm always like, I should bring that guy in because he was pretty cool.
Yeah.
When I was like, 12.
Well, there was a campaign I ran a long time ago called the Age of Worms campaign, and in that campaign, there's a point in the story where the players, they get a powerful magical artifact, but then they're immediately supposed to, they can hang on to it, but they start getting attacked because they have it. Mm-hmm. So the adventure, it's from Dungeon Magazine back in the day, and they recommend that the players give it to this like good aligned archmage for safekeeping. If they do so, he's supposed to give them each a customized magic item specifically for them. When I was running this, I was like, I want to go all out with this. I want to give the players something that they are really, really going to love. So I did a little bit of like research on each of the players, one of which was Jeff, found out characters they had played previously, like before Jeff ever played with me. I found out he had this character that had an emerald sword. I didn't know anything about the emerald sword. Neither did Steve, the person who played with Jeff in this campaign. But I gave him, I did my best to translate it into a 3.5 magic item. And then I gave Jeff a character his previous character had used. Yeah.
And Gabe had made that item to basically, I had gimped my character twice. I had made a character that didn't work out.
The hunter-gatherer character he alluded to earlier.
Yeah. Didn't work out at all. So I rolled a new character, tried it was a class that no one had ever tried before. Realized later that like, oh, this class doesn't work really well.
Yeah, so he ended up multi-classing and kind of gimped this character too. So I specifically designed the magic item to make up for his gimpiness.
Yeah, so it was fine-tuned to make my character, viable.
Right. But no, I think it turned out really good. I loved the moment where you guys realized what I was giving each of you.
Yeah, it was really great. I loved it.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful mix of sincere and heartfelt and kind of creepy.
It was definitely the apex of my DMing. I don't think I've gotten that good again.
Sure. Well, yeah, there's that those things I thought that were really cool when I was 12, and then when somebody brings them up when I'm in my 20s, I'm like, oh, I'm both like my inner child is like, oh, cool, and my adult self is like, oh, you looked into that, huh?
I feel that way about stuff I did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, it would be like if I had written in my dream diary, God, I'm terrified of this giant eyeball that just stares at me. And you had snuck into my house and read, like, oh, that'll be a good monster to put at the end of the campaign.
You're not supposed to know that I read about your giant eyeball dream. All right. Well, I think that'll do it for our regular questions for today. But before we close out, we do still have our social media discussion questions. So last week's social media question was favorite magic spell ? Jeff, what is your favorite magic spell?
I went with Fabricate because I just like the idea of being able to make anything you want from raw materials in an instant. And it's just like endless uses, I feel.
Yeah, it's a good spell. Will, how about yourself?
Oh, Speak to Dead.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That is a good one.
I very much favor spells that let me play a detective.
Sure.
And that is the creepiest of them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff you can say about the world by how dead people feel about being brought back to answer annoying questions.
Right, yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I my mind never even goes in that direction when I'm thinking of favorite spell. I'm thinking of like, yeah, I can make the biggest fireball or whatever. But
and like divination spells and necromancy spells, like, they can get pretty neat.
Yeah, they are pretty cool. I never think of those myself. I would probably say my favorite magic spell was prestidigitation, just because it's got so many uses. If that's considered cheating, which I kind of feel like it is.
It's not more. It's less cheating than the wish spell. I feel.
I guess. I think I said mislead when we brought this up.
Right.
Last
Yeah.
week,
You're right. Yep.
Turn invisible and then create an illusion of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have some responses on social media over on Facebook. Charlotte says, "For me, it's Guiding Bolt. I love it for my divine sorceress. I'm only level 4. I can't wait to learn new spells."
Guiding Bolt's nice. Yeah.
Ila, I think. Ila, I-L-A. I feel like Featherfall has saved me and fellow party members more times than I have fingers, toes, or friends to count on. Otherwise, prestidigitation, thaumaturgy, or minor illusion for funsies. Yeah, those are the ones that I feel like everybody should be picking those because they have so many uses. But
Featherfall is really great because it's a reaction and it's on multiple targets. Like and I feel like in older editions, like it wasn't an action to cast or something like that. You had to do it ahead of time, maybe?
That's a good question.
Maybe in the 3rd edition.
In 3rd edition, it was a free action. They later fixed that to be an immediate action.
Okay. But still.
In Eberron, because the biggest city in the world is a very vertical city, you could buy magic items that automatically activate Featherfall whenever you fall.
Yeah, they were just like little tokens that were
given
out to everybody.
a one-use thing that if you like fall off a tower, you won't die.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like in terms of like sheer like damage negation, is there any spell more effective for the price?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, like there was a video I watched. I keep forgetting
the baby shark. Why would you bring that up, Jeff?
Hey, you said it, not me. Zebashu.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
He does like animated. Talks about like D&D and stuff. But one of the things he brought up was like there's a cantrip that you can do like 20d6 damage to somebody. I'm like, what is he talking about? Oh, it's move earth.
Oh,
and so you can it's a cantrip that like an action you can use. You can move a 5-foot cube of earth.
Yeah,
5 feet, and so like with some time and planning ahead and stuff like that, you can basically make a pitfall trap.
Sure, with
a cantrip spell. And like you have an enemy fall down it, and they could fall, and like do
200 feet or whatever.
Yeah, and just take a ton of falling damage. Like, oh yeah, falling damage is really devastating.
I guess.
Yeah,
which you can do one time, and then your DM is like, nope, this is special magic ground.
Yeah,
exactly. The DM's Council says Mage Hand for its sheer versatility and self high five gratification.
Oh,
okay,
awesome.
Jonathan S says counterspell. It's fun when the DM says the enemy casts blank, and you're like, nope. It's pretty good. Sean M says Tasha's hideous laughter. I can tell all the puns I want, and no one can stop me. And then Colin just put a GIF from Labyrinth of David Bowie dancing with some goblins.
I'm not sure what's...
I guess it's what kind of magic spell to use. I guess.
Magic dance.
So everybody on Facebook, over on Reddit, Leomun's Secret Shelter, Vincent Takeda says that one. That's a pretty good one. I've seen... I'm thinking of Tiny Hut.
Tiny Hut is amazing.
A few... I feel like a few people said Tiny Hut, I think, over on Discord.
It is a amazing spell. I love it so much.
Yeah.
This is the strongest reaction anyone has ever had to Tiny Hut.
I mean, a lot of people...
Tiny Hut!
Anyone who uses Tiny Hut becomes a lover of Tiny Hut.
I read the description. Like, I would always pass over it, and I read the description. Like, I read the spell fully at one point, and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is so powerful. And, like, I had misread it once and thought it was way more powerful than it was, to where you could just put it up and still be like casting spells over it.
Oh yeah,
but you basically have to channel it.
Yeah.
It's like concentration and stuff. And you have to stay within it if you're the one casting it. But if you're the one casting it and you have a party of like archers or something,
they can just sit in the inside of the hut and shoot out.
They can just step out, shoot, come back in.
Okay, well, we're not talking about Leomun's Tiny Hut though. maybe in a minute. We're talking about Leomon's Secret Shelter.
Okay.
Which is, or Secure Shelter rather, which I think creates like a cabin or something for you to live in for some amount of time. Javokler says Thunderwave because boom. I'll try to put in some sort of a sound effect with
sure.
me saying boom. Timmy Soup says a player mind constantly uses prestidigitation to make NPCs and others soil themselves quite regularly.
Yeah.
Not entirely sure if that's how it's supposed to work, but we do it anyway because it's hilarious.
I actually had at one point we ended up in a dating game in my campaign, and that did come up. We made one of the other competitors.
Oh no.
Look, filth. Like, I think we put a terrible stink on them because you can create one sensory effect.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. See, at that point, would you have to put in like a save or something like that? Because if you're like,
no, I mean,
with targeting,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe because it is if it's like their clothes or something.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's less that you're putting it on them and you're putting it just on the air around them.
Sure, yeah, yep.
So we didn't have anybody on Twitter, but we do have on Discord. Stiltskin Kupo 84 says teleport, hands down.
Oh, sure.
Yoda Leia He-Who says, definitely Mordenkainen's magnificent mansion. I have more than once thought about how much money I would save if I had such a spell in real life. Mm-hmm. To which I responded, Yoda Leia He-Who should watch The Lost Room because that's basically what the key does.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. If I had one magical item from like fiction or something like that, that's like because you got a place to stay basically anytime you want, and you can pretty much teleport anywhere.
Pretty much, yeah. Will, are you at all familiar with The Lost Room?
Only insofar as I'm familiar with any Peter Krause project, which is
okay. Well, I mean, I know I've recommended a lot of media for you, but like if there's one, if I could only recommend one thing that everyone in the world should watch, it is The Lost Room. It's like 5 hours of television, and it is the best 5 hours of television I've ever watched.
It's pretty great.
It is 100% recommendation for me. Onyx says, here you go, Jeff. Leomon's Tiny Hut.
Yep.
In dungeon long rest.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cast a spell and then chill out.
You got 8 hours. You got 8 hours of invulnerability.
Unless they can burrow.
No, I'm pretty sure it's a sphere.
It's a hemisphere.
Is it?
Jeff. Yes, it is. It is a hemisphere.
Guys, please don't fight.
No, give me the rule book right now. Come on.
Yep. And then Deborah Soar says, Shield, I like to flavor mine as chronomancy, slowing down the attack. That's
Very
pretty
cool.
good.
Okay.
And then Jason says, Grease, never leave home without it. Ever since Chris saved us from that giant with a well-placed grease spell, I have always loved Grease. Now, this is Jason. He played in we've played with him for years and years. I don't remember the example he is mentioning, but I think it's odd that he would recommend Grease because in a game that Chris was running, he gave Jay this really overpowered weapon and then realized that it was really overpowered. So he cast Grease on Jay's weapon so that he would drop it and then shattered it. So I feel like Jay should have a vendetta against Grease, personally.
Well, it sounds like it's the one that he wants. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Well, we go together.
This is my brand. This is my brand, and it's terrible.
All right. All right. So that was last week's social media question. Thank you for everybody who submitted. So this week's question is kind of a non-standard one, I would say.
Sure.
You come across a staircase that goes up and down. So you're not at the top, you're not at the bottom. You come to the staircase at the middle. Which direction do you go first?
Whichever path I think will be shortest.
Okay. Ooh, what do you? That's a good question. How do you determine that though?
Well, like if I'm in a tower, like if I'm just entered like a tower, I will go down first because
okay.
I figure the basement won't be as big as the tower.
Yeah.
If I'm in like a one-story building that feels like maybe the top of a dungeon or something, I'll go up, check out the second floor. Okay. It's the completionist thing. You want to go down the shortest path first.
I would rather hit every dead end in the entire dungeon before getting to the critical path than I would never want to get the critical path first because then I've missed everything.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm. You didn't get all the ammo pickups and the and the bonuses.
How about you, Jeff?
Mega elixirs.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a tough question. I think I go down just because it's easier.
Yeah.
You don't have to climb anything. But then if you get to the bottom to realize that you need to go back up to the top, that's just that much more work you got to put into it.
That's what I would do. I would say go up first because if I need to retreat, it's a lot easier than the alternative.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think you're right.
Yeah.
These are some beautiful parables about human ethics.
Sure. I always have a backup plan if I ever need to flake out on something.
Sure.
All right. So that's this week's social media question. So you can check that out on social media. So that'll do it for our questions for this week. Before we close out, though, we do still have our last segment. So I think we should, I guess, let's take a moment. Let's relax. Let's take a deep breath. Let's remember those who have come before us, maybe those who went up and then got killed, so we know not to go that way.
It's a little trail of blood coming
exactly. Down. So let's remember those who have come before us as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. So, Will, you have a funeral pyre story for us. Is that correct?
I do. Okay. I'm going to tell you the story of Barry Windstruck.
Oh, okay.
Barry Windstruck was my gnome warlock. He was my most recent character. His whole thing was he was in service to an entity he called the management, which encouraged him to go out and make deals.
That's pretty good.
However, as I mentioned before, that campaign ended with my previous character becoming the big bad, which my DM invited me to play as against the party in the final battle. At which point Barry had to die so that I wasn't like dividing my efforts.
Sure. Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
So which I was okay with because like I knew we knew we were ending the campaign. So
sure. Gotta make some sacrifices.
Yeah. So what ended up happening was he was a warlock with Pact of the Chain, I want to say, the feature that gives you a familiar.
Yeah.
Who he had always treated as basically his intern. It was a quasit named Dave.
Awesome.
But at this last moment, Dave was like, no, the management doesn't want you to do this. Do not fight this person. Just get out of the way, stay alive. And Barry, who was not an especially good person, refused to abandon his friends. And so was just like snap killed by his... Like, it was a little Deus Ex Machina. It was just like, oh, we got to get this character out of the way.
Yeah.
But he was just knocked dead. At which point I had my previous character raise his body as a zombie to attack his friends. Which was
oh, no.
Nice.
But the touch that I loved was after the campaign, I was like, how would Barry say goodbye? So I sent my group an email saying, a month later, you all receive a letter signed from the estate of Barry Windstruck, containing an itemized bill for every spell he ever cast on their behalf, and no personal note.
Oh, that's great.
Just an invoice.
Mm-hmm.
That is amazing.
Wow. There you go. Man, good job.
I liked that character a lot. He was not a nice person.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess let's raise a glass in memory of Barry Windstruck, who shouldn't have asked to speak to the manager.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, no one should.
Clink. There you go. All right. Well, before I get to my outro spiel, Will, do you want to tell our listeners once again where they can find you, what sort of stuff they can, how they can support you, that sort of stuff?
Sure. The best place to find me is at everythingtoguppy.cat is the URL we have. That's a reference to a character from The Binding of Isaac.
Yes, sure. We have a Friend Quest episode, actually, where a few episodes where I play through Binding of Isaac and explain it all to Jeff.
Yep. Oh, very cool. The show comes out 4 times a week in 10 to 15-minute chunks.
Mm-hmm.
It's very silly. And you can support the show at patreon.com/duckfeedtv. You can also go to the AV Club to read my writing about video games and also Frasier.
Awesome.
There you go.
That's like that checks a lot of my boxes there. So.
Yep.
All right. So, Will, thank you for coming on the show. And if our listeners would like to submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the funeral pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned on the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook, facebook.com/interpartyconflict, on Reddit at r/interpartyconflict, on our Interparty Discord, or on Twitter at InPartyConflict for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you'd like to support the show, check out the rewards at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. There's a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is our YouTube channel where we play video games.
Yes. And speaking of video games, check out my side project, the Arcade Memories Podcast. If you'd like to submit your own childhood memories of going to the arcade, record them or write them to me at arcadememoriespodcast@gmail.com. Also, head over to bit.ly/interpartyconflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games courtesy of Mary and Tom over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless, the Hacker's RPG. And so, everybody,
good night.